MAPD for giving me the opportunity to actually present this my case for this webinar series, and I feel very honored to be invited as the first speaker for to kickstart the MAPD webinar series for the year 2021. So I believe later on there will be a lot of interesting topics that will be presented by other pediatric specialists all around Malaysia. And I was given a task actually to discuss and share my experience in managing a case of subgingival crown root fracture. Where during the clinical treatment, so I did use some innovative technique to actually troubleshoot some of the clinical problems that I encounter during the treatment. And most of the cases that I've done, I've co-managed it with my postgraduate students. Okay, and as mentioned by Dr. Farina, so I graduated from Queen Mary University of London back in 2015. So this is a picture of our on the graduation day. So we have my dear friend over here, Dr. Ko Sweeting. He's a specialist in Seredang at the moment. And the middle of it, we have our guru, Professor Faranti Wong, which is not someone which is a very established reputation internationally. And 4 years later, we meet again. So looking at the ads at the back here, so you can see Cik Ta, our Malaysian celebrity. So definitely we know that this photo was taken in Malaysia. To be specific, it was in Kuala Lumpur City Centre, KLCC. And we have Dr. Aimi here from USM, also Dr. Sri Kavi from Johor Bahru as well. Okay, so moving and actually I'm currently working at the Faculty of Dentistry UKM as a lecturer and also a clinical specialist, and which is for those who don't know, so actually our campus is located at the Kuala Lumpur campus. So UKM usually associated with Bangi, so we are not in Bangi. We also not in Cheras, which is the HUKM located. So we are actually at the heart of Kuala Lumpur. And we are sandwiched by two big buildings, which is the Women and Children Hospital and also the Pusat Rawatan Harian Pakar HKL. So we are small faculty at the middle of Kuala Lumpur itself. So this is the general outline of my presentation today. So what I would like to share with you during this 1 hour presentation. So hope all of you can bear with me for this 1 hour. And to start on first, so we would like to look at the definition of a crown root fracture. So what is a crown root fracture actually? So according to the IADT guideline in 2020, so crown root fracture can be defined as a fracture of enamel, dentin and cementum. And furthermore, it can be divided into uncomplicated crown root fracture, which there is no pulpal involvement and there's no pulp tissue injury associated with it. So if you can look at the diagram over here, so there is a crack line propagated from the labial surface, passed through the enamel, dentin, and straight away ended subgingivally into the palatal aspect of the tooth in the root portion. And another classification for it is the complicated crown root fracture, which there is a pulpal involvement in the injury. So from the diagram here, you can see that the fracture line actually pierces through the pulp tissue over there, causing the pulpal tissue injury. And this crown root fracture represent around 0.3 to 5% of the total crown fracture reported in the literature. And both upper central and lateral incisor are the most common teeth that have been affected by this type of injury. And managing a subgingival crown root fracture present the clinician with a very difficult restorative problems, most probably because of the subgingival fracture line. So you won't be able to actually achieve a good coronal seal of the restoration, and also complicated by the need to maintain the periodontal tissue in the good health. So usually if you end up your restoration subgingivally, so there is a chance that you violate the biological width of the tooth itself. Eventually later on will lead to gingival recession and other periodontal problem. So the main treatment aim of treatment for this type of injury is number one is to bring the fracture line supragingivally, so that you can actually acquire a good quality restoration for the tooth itself. And secondly, to maintain the periodontal tissue health, and specifically to maintain the biological width of the tooth, so that there won't be any periodontal problem arise afterwards. And last but not least is we would like to preserve the tooth for the aesthetic purposes if possible. If not, if you decide to extract the tooth, so usually we need to think of some replacement in terms of a prosthesis to at least maintain the aestheticness of the patient when they are smiling. Okay, and to able to achieve those aim of treatment, there are a few factors that need to be considered before we can embark on which type of treatment option that we would like to choose for those particular patient. So those factors are among is the extension of the fracture line. So whether it is supragingiva or supraalveolar or subgingiva, so that will determine the type of treatment that you need, you can do. So for supragingiva or supraalveolar fracture, sometimes you can do a little bit of gingivectomy and straight away put the indirect or direct restoration over it. Also the remaining of the tooth structure available, so sometimes you need to consider whether there is a need of the post, whether the tooth structure available able to support the crown or the restoration that you want to place later on. So, and there is whether there is a need of a post to retain the core and the crown. Okay. And next factor also the pulpal involvement over there, and whether there is whether it is a complicated or uncomplicated crown root fracture. And this pulpal when there is a pulpal involvement, definitely you need to initiate a pulp therapy, and the type of pulp therapy will largely depend on the stage of the root formation. Okay, so whether it is a immature root or it is a close apex or mature root. So for a mature root, the guideline suggests to do a full root canal treatment. But for an immature root, sometimes we need to give a chance for the tooth to regenerate itself. So what we call an apexogenesis treatment, where we do a partial pulpotomy and then to allow some healing of the root and a continuation of the root formation over there. And apart from that, the concomitant bone and soft tissue injury also need to be addressed. So usually for the crown root fracture, is quite uncommon to have a concomitant bone injury. So because most of the impact from the force of the impact from the fall or from the trauma is being absorbed totally by the tooth. So that's why the tooth have a through and through fracture from the labial up to the palatal and to the ended in the root portion. Most common injury with the concomitant bone fracture is usually the lateral luxations. But there is some certain cases where in a multiple trauma, so you might also have the bone injury, soft tissue injury, and also the crown root fracture. So this factor also need to be considered, especially in terms of the splinting time for the tooth involved. And patient cooperation also play a major factor in this type of treatment. So because the treatment will definitely involve a local anesthesia, so whether the patient can actually can achieve the or receive the local anesthesia on the dental chair, and whether the treatment length also will be very lengthy, and also they require a lot of appointments. So patient cooperation, patient compliance is very important over here. For inhalation sedation is another option, especially when you try to manage the patient during the acute phase of the treatment. And last but not least, the aesthetic demands of the patient. So, usually we see a patient more on the early teens or the mid-teens, where the aesthetic demand is not really that high. So usually the aesthetic demand will come most probably from the parents itself. So they want to try to dictate our treatment plan, try to make sure that the aesthetic component of their child is not being compromised. So that I said before, that whenever you decide to remove the tooth or because of the unrestorability of it, so you might need to think of something, some sort of replacement, prosthetic replacement for the patient. And in the case of a mixed dentition, so usually we can give them a denture incorporated into a URA. So that is the most common or the simplest type of treatment. We can't do any bridge yet because the patient is growing, so the bridge will hinder the expansion of the maxilla. So that's also need to be considered as well. And according to the IADT guideline, so they actually updated the guideline recently in 2020. So during the midst of COVID-19 last year, so they updated the guideline in 2020. So it comes in 4 parts, and one of the parts is the fracture and luxation, so which is where the crown and root fracture lies under these categories. And we have an assembled list of well-known authors over here, which contributes to the guideline over here. So we have Mary Teresa Flores, Anne O'Donnell, Bouguinon, Kohenka, Peter Day, and also, of course, Professor Anderson as well. So what does the IADT, the current update in the IADT suggest for the treatment of crown root fracture? So we should look into it here. So they divided it into, based on their classification earlier, so they divided into an uncomplicated crown root fracture and also a complicated crown root fracture. So if you can see here, the clinical findings, definitely the patient will present with the mobile tooth, and the mobile portion is usually still present on the tooth itself, but it's only been attached to the tooth by the gingiva. So it's very mobile and it's very tender to percussion. And even if you touch it, so the patient sometimes can scream if you give it you touch it without local anesthesia. To do a pulp sensibility test is definitely need to be done because you need to establish a baseline data for the sensibility test of the tooth, but it's not necessary it to be carried out during the first visit. So because the patient is in extreme distress, the tooth is very tender to percussion, it's mobile some more. So sometimes when you try to put the tip of your EPT on the mobile part, so it will be very painful. And you cannot give LA, because if you give LA, then you put the EPT test, and definitely it won't give any response. And if you place the tip of the EPT more apical or more cervical, then you might hit close to the gingiva, and also we give a false response or false negative or false positive results. So you can actually do the pulp sensibility test on the second visit. When most of the case, most of the condition are able to stabilize, there's no more bleeding, and the patient are quite more comfortable to undergo those type of tests. Okay, so you may or may not do the pulp sensibility test on the first visit. And also the clinical finding also suggests to investigate or evaluate the extent of the fracture, whether it's subgingival or supraalveolar. And to achieve this, you can do it in 2 ways. One is from the clinical examination, and the second one is through the X-ray radiographic examination. And generally, previously, what been laid down in the guideline is you recommended to use 2 views of X-ray, periapical X-ray, basically to assess whether there is any concomitant or underlying root fracture. But something new which has been added in this current review or current guideline is they also consider the CBCT to be used in part of the radiographic assessment for this type of case. So basically, they say that it can be considered for better visualization of the fracture path, its extent, and its relationship to the marginal bone, and also evaluate the crown root ratio to help determine the treatment option. So, which I quite agree with the use of CBCT, with the advancement of the current radiographic investigation. So we can actually use the CBCT instead of the 2 additional radiograph to shoot from the either angle of the tooth. Okay, so moving on to the treatment, so I just enlarge it for you so that you can have a clear sign of it. So treatment plan, until the treatment plan is finalized, so you can actually stabilize the tooth temporarily first, and if there's no pulp exposed, so you can actually cover the tooth with cover the dentin with a glass ionomer and resin burning agent and composite resin. And the future treatment option will largely depend in part of the patient age and anticipated cooperation. Okay, so this is what the factor that I already explained before, and those options include orthodontic extrusion, surgical extrusion, and root canal treatment if there is any pulp necrosis or infection going on in a case of uncomplicated crown root fracture. Okay, so and also later on maybe another option is you can do so vital root submerged intentional implantation or extraction and auto transplantation. So if you look at the list of the treatment option here, so they put the orthodontic extrusion as the first in the list of the treatment planning. So it is not the first line of treatment. So if it is first line of treatment, that meaning that you need to do it first before you go to the next line of treatment. It's not a first line of treatment, but it's the first in the list for you to actually evaluate whether you can do it, whether is it feasible to perform the orthodontic extrusion or not. Or if not, then you might need to do the surgical extrusion. One thing that I don't really keen on the use of surgical extrusion, especially for a subgingivally located crown root fracture, is you might need to manipulate the soft tissue a little bit because you might need to do a bone gutter first to actually grip the tooth with your forceps, and then bring the tooth a little bit coronally before you split it on. So sometimes in an experienced clinician, so when you try to extrude the tooth, you with an extra force, you can accidentally avulse the tooth instead of extrude it. So you totally extract the tooth from out of the socket. So it's quite a risky treatment option over there. Okay, so usually in my treatment plan, so I try to stick with the orthodontic extrusion for this one, which I will discuss later. And similarly, for the complicated crown root fracture, so the clinical finding and the imaging is still the same as the uncomplicated crown root fracture, but the difference is only on the treatment of the pulp treatment. Okay, so it will depend on whether the root is completely formed or it's still immature. So when there is an immature root formation or incomplete root formation, so the guideline do suggest that it is advantageous to preserve the pulp by performing a partial pulpotomy or a spheric pulpotomy. So at least you give the chance for the root to actually regenerate later on and continue the normal root development. Okay, but in a mature teeth with a complete root formation, so they suggest that the removal of the pulp is usually indicated. So what they mean by removal of the pulp is you remove totally the whole pulp tissue from the tooth structure. So that because this usually in this type of treatment in a mature tooth, there always the need of a post to support the crown and the core and the crown for the final restoration. So when there is a post that is there's a plan of a post to be placed in the root structure, so definitely you need to do the root canal treatment for this purpose. And also the future treatment option is number one is the completion of the root canal treatment, definitely. And then also the list down here, orthodontic extrusion again is quite up in the list, and followed by the surgical extrusion, vital root submerged, intentional implantation, extraction, and auto transplantation. Okay, so moving on, for the later part of my presentation today, I would like to share our journey, the UKM experience in managing those cases of subgingival crown root fracture. So over the past years, we received a number of patients that come to our clinic with a subgingival crown root fracture. So that's why we managed to do a series of a case. And as like I mentioned before, most of the case I co-manage with my postgraduate students. So some of them are already being the specialists in their respective states. So special thanks to Dr. Catherine in Sarawak, Dr. Safwani. So in Sabah, Dr. Halimah in Johor Bahru, Dr. Fayadah currently doing her gazettement in Ipoh, and also our two current postgraduate, final year postgraduate students, Dr. Isti and also Dr. Najib Kaur. So special thanks to them for assisting me in completing the case. Okay. So what is orthodontic extrusion? So orthodontic extrusion in the mixed dentition is a little bit tricky. So because when you do the orthodontic treatment, we use the fixed appliers over here. So in the mixed dentition, so usually we don't bond any of the orthodontic bracket on deciduous teeth. But actually for management of this case, so we actually use the existing permanent tooth which is available in the mouth during the mixed dentition. So what we call modified 2x4 fixed orthodontic appliance. Okay, so what does it mean by the 2x4 is actually involve only the upper arch, and you can see here from the picture. So the 2 is actually represent the 2 molar bands, which is placed usually on the 1/6 and the 2/6. And the 4 is actually the brackets, the number of the brackets that have been placed on the upper anterior teeth, which is the tooth 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, and 2, 2. Okay, and always liaise and consult with our friendly neighborhood orthodontist, especially in terms of the design of the appliance, and also which wire to start off with. Is it NITA, is it stainless steel wire, is it 0.4, 0.14, 0.016? So everything, sometimes we are not well versed in these terms, so usually always liaise and consult our friend orthodontist. So usually they are always helpful and very keen to help us out. Okay, so this is a more clearer picture of the 2x4. So you can see there's a 2 molar band over here, 4 bracket on the upper anterior tooth, and there is an additional design over here where they put a transpalatal arch. So this is where you need the orthodontic input, whether which type of design that you want to use for your cases. So each cases will have a different type of design for the fixed 2x4 appliance. So the TPA, or the transpalatal arch here, usually is used to enhance the anchorage value of the tooth, and also to prevent the mesial drift of the 6 as well, especially when you lost either of the E or the D's for the upper arch. Okay, so some points to consider. Okay, so the remaining tooth fragment should has a sufficient enamel for attachment of orthodontic bracket. That is a must. So if they don't have any enamel, so you won't be able to attach your orthodontic bracket. And the placement of the bracket on the traumatized tooth should be slightly cervical as compared to the bracket on the other teeth, so that the force actually by placement placing the bracket slightly cervical, so you actually creating a force that will bring the tooth downwards. Okay, and always consider the crown root ratio before extruding the traumatized tooth. There's also been mentioned in the guideline. Always consider pulpotomy as the first line treatment in the case of complicated crown root fracture with an open apex. So it has also been mentioned before in the guideline. And orthodontic movement of tooth movement of orthodontic tooth movement on the endodontically treated tooth. So there is a wide debate on this one, because there's no clear guideline on the endodontic point of view when to actually to start or to initiate the orthodontic tooth movement after endodontically treated tooth. There is a lot of papers in the literature that discuss on this matter, but for me, always my point or my take is always can initiate the orthodontic treatment after at least 3 months of obturation with no sign and symptoms. So meaning that after you complete your root canal treatment, you review the tooth first. There's no sign and symptoms, there is no periapicalization, there's no mobility, there's no sign of root resorption. So then if after you are happy, then you can initiate the orthodontic treatment. But then if there is any sign of root resorption or anything, then you might to add on more another 3 months for monitoring before you can start the orthodontic treatment, because we don't want the orthodontic treatment or the orthodontic tooth movement will cause more resorption to the root of the tooth itself. Okay. So here is the case number 1. It's a 8-year-old girl. So she had a fall from her bicycle. So you can see clearly there is a crack line over there. The tooth is still hanging inside the mouth by the gingiva. And this is the apical view or the occlusal view of the tooth here. Over there, you can see the teeth are split into 2 portions. And this is how the periapical radiograph looks like. So you can see the fracture line over there across the enamel, and it goes slightly above the subgingiva but above the alveolar bone, so we call it a supraalveolar. And the root also here is still wide open. So what we did with this case, so it's quite, we do perform a pulpotomy first, a SWAT pulpotomy for this case, but eventually this patient also have a quite a poor oral hygiene in the first place. So I'm not sure whether it's related or not with her hygiene, but she suddenly developed pain and discomfort over the tooth after a couple of weeks after we initiate the SWAT pulpotomy. So we end up of doing the full root canal treatment with epexification using the MTA for this case. Okay, and then we review the patient for 3 months, so there's no sign and symptoms afterwards. So then we put on the bracket on straight away on the tooth because there is a sufficient enamel over there. We managed to put the bracket on, and then this is how the radiograph look like post orthodontic movement just before we remove the brackets. Okay, and this is the final outcome of the patient. So we managed to bring the tooth down and we managed to put a nice restoration for her. And again, as I mentioned before, her oral hygiene is not that good, so even after during the review appointment also you can see some plaque and debris all over her teeth. So we still keep on monitoring the oral hygiene of this patient until now. And similarly to the second case over here, so it's another boy, 12 years old boy, had a fall at the swimming pool on the weekend. So come to our clinic on Tuesday. So you can see from the clinical picture over here, so the tooth are split into two portions, the palatal half and also the labial half. And we took a CBCT for this patient, and you can see there's a straight, nice cut over there, all over the palatal portion of the tooth structure over there. Okay, and the cut or the fracture line lies subgingivally, and also it's quite very near to the pulp tissue over there. So when we remove the palatal portion, actually we can see the pink pulp beneath the dentine over there. So we decide to initiate an elective endodontic treatment. So we do a full endodontic treatment for this patient. And afterwards, we review the patient for 3 months. There's no sign and symptoms. And we put on the bracket on to extrude the teeth. And this is how the tooth look like after extrusion. There's very nice healing periapiculation. There's no periapiculation over there. The bone is still looks very healthy. And this is the final restoration of the patient. Okay, so but my comment is I'm still not happy with the gingival contour of this patient, but we still keep on, and also some gingival inflammation of here and there as well. So we still keep on monitoring this patient from time to time. Okay, so that's the two first cases where you have an enough enamel structure for you to place the bracket on and for you to track down the tooth to bring the fracture line supragingivally so that you can do a nice restoration. So it's a pretty straightforward case. Okay, so trauma, and then remove the portion, do the root canal treatment, put the bracket on, and then extrude the teeth, put the restoration. Very straightforward case. Okay, and then come into my mind, so how should we manage a case of a complicated crown root fracture with a minimal enamel structure? Okay, so when there is a sufficient enamel structure, yes, you can bond the bracket on the tooth. But what if they don't have any enamel structure? How we want to bond the bracket on the root surface? So this question suddenly comes in when we see the third case that we see in the faculty. So this is 11 years or 10 years old girl presented to our clinic with a vertical fracture over here. So you can see the fracture line propagates up until the subgingival area, and we took a CBCT, and what we found out that it's not only a vertical fracture, but there is also a cervical root fracture that's going on as well. So we discussed with the parents that the parents are really adamant they don't want to extract the tooth. they beg us, so please doctor, don't do whatever you can, so as long as you don't extract the tooth, we will accept whatever the treatment option, but please if you can, don't extract the tooth, because this is their daughter, so they are in the she is in her teenage years, so they don't want the losing by wearing a denture or by extracting the tooth will have a negative impact on her self-esteem. So the parents really need or beg us to save the tooth. So this case I managed it with Dr. Safwani back in 2016, if not mistaken. So Safwani look at me, I look at Safwani. So we both of us crack our head what to do with this patient. Okay, so we get our endodontic friend opinion, we get our periodontic friend, periodontist friend opinion. We also get our orthodontist friend opinion. So our concern is if we want to extrude this tooth, number one, we don't have enough tooth structure to bond the bracket on, and number two is the crown root ratio afterwards. Okay, so whether even if with the extrusion, whether will we violate the biological width, or whether the crown root ratio is favorable or not. But after a lengthy discussion, then we decide to give it a try to orthodontically extrude this tooth structure. So if it fails, then we will go back to the initial plan of extracting the tooth. So there's no harm of trying this type of treatment in this patient, and we told the parents are happy to pay for all of the cost of the treatment. So we initiate a treatment plan, formulate a treatment plan. So because of although there is an open apex over there, but because of the tooth structure, there's no enamel at all to support the final restoration. So this tooth definitely need a post afterwards. So we decide to initiate a apexification of the tooth with MTA, and followed by the obturation with the GP. Okay, so what we did is we attach the tooth back into its place, okay, and then we put a splint on. So the reason why we reattach back the tooth in place is, one is to stabilize the condition, and number two, to have a stabilized point of reference for root canal treatment. Okay, so otherwise if you remove it immediately, number one is the aesthetic of the patient would be compromised. That's number one. Number two, you will have not a good reference point for the root canal treatment. So we still reattach it back to at least have a stable point for root canal treatment. And then you can see from the x-ray here, this is the line of the vertical fracture, and this is the line of the cervical fracture. So a combo fracture over there. And then we managed to complete the root canal treatment, and we monitor it for 3 months, and there's no sign and symptoms. The tooth healed very well. And then come to the point where how to extrude this tooth. So now we remove the coronal portion, the fracture part. So we leave out with this type of root stumps in the teeth. So how to extrude it? Okay, so then we got an inspiration actually from our orthodontic colleagues from the J hook. So this is a J hook. This is what is actually being used in the case of a headgear, the patient wearing a headgear, so they use this J hook actually to retract the front portion of the headgear. So we get inspired with this J hook. So we think of why not we try to put this J hook inside the tooth. So we can put the long portion of the J hook inside the canal, and we leave the curvature, the J part, outside the tooth, and actually we can tie some elastics over there, and we can actually pull the tooth downward. So which is a good idea. And then but we cannot use the similar J hook from the orthodontist, because the size of it is quite long, and the semicircle or the curvature over there is, the width is quite long as well, so that we will not sufficient or not suitable for the tooth. So we end up by bending our own J hook using the stainless steel orthodontic wire. It's 0.6 millimeter if not mistaken. So we bend it into a J shape, and then we put it into the canal, and we cement it temporarily with a GIC. So why GIC? Why it's not any other cement? So we tried with IRM, but the moment we put the gold chain, the power chain, the J hook comes out from the tooth, so it's not strong enough to withstand the force. So resin cement, definitely we won't go into that type of cement, because you will be cursing yourself when you want to remove the post later on. Okay, so so we decide to use a GIC. So we use the Fuji 7 over here, which is in orange color, so it's easy for us to distinguish between the tooth structure and also the cement. And after that, we put the bracket on, and we tie on the power chain from the two bracket and onto the J hook over there. Okay, and subsequent visit, we incorporate another bracket to increase the anchorage value of the structure. And here, if you can see, we put a ligature wire connecting the tooth 1, 2, and 1, 1 over here. Why we put the ligature wire over here is to prevent the tooth 1, 1 from moving or 2, 1 from moving into the space of the tooth here. So previously, for the first case and the second case, you still have the enamel portion of the tooth. So the possibility of the adjacent tooth to tip into the space is quite less. But here, you totally don't have anything. So the root is embedded subgingivally. So if the force is not properly applied, so there is a chances of these two teeth tip into the space. So you will have a space loss later on. So that's why you put a ligature wire as a space maintainer to prevent the movement of the tooth encroaching into the space. Okay, and after 1 month of activation, so here is the position of the J hook and of the tooth. So already almost equivalent to the level of the adjacent bracket. So remember that I said before that the placement of the bracket should be slightly apical or slightly cervical, so that actually when this bend actually will create a force. So this type of bend will create a force, so that it will pull the tooth downward. If you put the bracket on a little bit higher over here, so what happened is there won't be any much force that is can be transmitted to the tooth to be extruded. So with here, like in this position, the force is almost negligible because it's already in a straight line. Okay. And after that, we do definitely the tooth need a post that we sufficiently extrude the tooth, and then we need a post. So we decide to choose the Everstick post, which is moldable glass fiber post. So why we pick this type of post is because we don't want to put unnecessary force or stress to the root surface anymore. So because we already put the J hook in, so the J hook need to be removed because it is a metal. So the metal won't stick to the composite, cannot hold the crown. So we need to remove it, and we need to put a proper post. If you try to put custom the preform post, the fiber post, the preform one, so usually you need to a little bit of prep the tooth before you can receive the post. So that will eventually create a little bit of stress to the root structure, and sometimes it can cause a fracture of the root. With Everstick post, it is material, it's a glass fiber post, but it's a very moldable and very soft when before you cure it. Okay, so what is Everstick post? And you can put it come in a strip, and actually you can put it one by one into the canal, like the lateral condensation technique for your GP obturation. Okay, so what is Everstick post? So there is a brief introduction, brief information about it. It is flexible, resin impregnated, uncured glass fiber post. Okay, so this post can be adapted to the morphology of the root canal and attains high fractural strength after light cure. So before you light cure it, it's a very soft, very moldable, and you can actually adapt the Everstick post into the canal according to the shape of the canal. So that's why sometimes you actually don't need any vigorous preparation to prepare the root canal to receive the Everstick post, because you can actually customize the type of the post, because it's a very moldable and it can adapt to the morphology of the root canal treatment. And the glass fiber itself can be reactivated even after polymerization, leading to the desired shape of the core. So after you light cure it, so yes, it will attain a high fractural strength, but there is still the unreacted monomer after the light curing process. So there is unreacted polymerization that going on. So then you can reactivate back the glass fiber when you want to do the your resin core, and also, subsequently the crown as well. And this fiber reinforced post is has a high tensile strength, and the elastic modulus is being similar to the dentine, so thereby causing a less root fracture. And like I said before, there's no preparation needed, or maybe a very minimal preparation needed. So hence you can preserve the thickness of the dentine, and the bonding of the fiber reinforced post, because it is a resin base. So you bond it to the composite resin, the core, and then you use the adhesive cement to cement the fiber post in the fiber reinforced post in the canal. So this cement and these three resin based product will produce a monoblock system, which can minimize the micro leakage and the post failure, because it will combine, the resin will interact with each other from the post, from the core, and from the adhesive cement, and produce a monoblock system, which will hold the tooth together and prevent micro leakage and the post failure. Okay, so this is after we did the core build up over there. So we also keep our principal prosthodontic principle. We do a ferrule effect type of preparation. So our prosthodontist colleague will be happy with that. And this is the final obturation, and also the after the crown being placed. So you can see the crown root ratio also is quite favorable, although we doubt the crown root ratio initially, but we end up with almost 1:2 ratio over there. So it's quite good ratio for this type of case. And we still put on the palatally, we put on the spleen over there to maintain the position of the tooth, so that more PDL fiber can attach afterwards. And this is how the tooth look like. Okay, so the final restoration of the tooth over there. Okay, nicely done by Dr. Safwani using a GC Genial, if not mistaken, during that time. So the patients were very happy, the parents extremely happy, because we don't extract the tooth and we managed to restore the aesthetic of the patient. So the patient are very happy afterwards. Okay, and then some reflective learning from the case number 3 is orthodontic extrusion is still a viable option in the case of a subgingival crown root fracture with minimal enamel available, and we can do use the modified J hook can be used to act as an anchor to extrude the tooth. And the post is usually needed to support the crown as the final or interim restoration. But the only problem is the J hook. What we did with the stainless steel orthodontic wire needs to be removed afterwards. So during the removal, the clinician need to be extremely cautious, so you don't impose unnecessary stress to the root then which lead to the root fracture later. So this problem still lingering around in our head after we finish the treatment of the third case. And then we come out with a solution. Since the Everstick post is moldable before we light cure it, so actually we can actually bend the coronal end of the post, making it into a J shape. Okay, and once the extrusion process is completed, we can just shave off the J end and proceed with the core build up. So also then so we come up with we think of this solution after we complete the third case. So we are waiting for any new case coming in, so we can actually try on a patient, and our prayer was answered by the God. So we have a fourth case over here, so which is suitable to utilize those modified J hook, Everstick J hook. So you can see a fourth case over here. So there is a complicated crown enamel dentin fracture over there. You can see the pulp tissue jutting out from the bleeding and from the pulp tissue jutting out from there. But you also can see over here, there is actually a crack line over there. There is a crack line of a crown root fracture of this tooth. Okay, so actually this patient present with a complicated crown root fracture on a tooth 1-1 and a complicated enamel dentin fracture on a tooth 2-1. Okay, so two combo fracture. So the patient I think went for ice skating and suddenly fall down and hit the tooth on the ice skating ring. So what we propose treatment is definitely we will do root pulpotomy, SPECT pulpotomy for the tooth 2-1, and we plan to do post and full endodontic treatment for the tooth 1-1, because looking at the tooth structure, there's not much enamel will be available afterwards, that the tooth need a post for it. So we decide to use to do a full root canal treatment for this case. And before that, we stabilize the tooth. We do the SPECT pulpotomy. We build up the 2-1, and then for the tooth 1-1, we stabilize it first. Similar, the reason is to have a stable reference point for us to do the root canal treatment later on. And we also put the spleen on to stabilize the mobility of the tooth 1-1 over there. And 2 weeks later, this happened. Okay, so the patient suddenly knock off the spleen, and the tooth completely comes out. But luckily they able to retrieve it, and they keep it, the tooth structure with them. But the spleen already gone. Okay, so you can see the severity of the fracture over there. So with the palatally, there is a subgingival margin. Okay, and from there we did complete our root canal treatment for the tooth 1-1. And then we purposely not obturate it up to the cervical part, because we know we were going to place a post inside the tooth canal. So we just obturate it up to that level with obtura. And the teeth 2-1 is actually undergone a SPECT pulpotomy, but then later on, after a couple of weeks, the patient complained of pain and discomfort over the tooth, and we end up doing both root canal treatment for both teeth, unfortunately. And this is the Everstick J hook that we can share with you. So how to do it? So you just take the Everstick post, you soak it in with the bonding agent. So because it's quite long, so I use this endodontic what you call it, endodontic casing or something, to put the endodontic dish, to put the Everstick post, and I soak it with the bonding agent. So this is to reactivate the uncured or unpolymerized monomer. And then this after a while, in the pack, when you bought it, so I bought it from the GC company. In the pack, it's a little bit stiff, but when you soak it with the bonding agent, it will be very, very soft. And then actually, then you can, once it's ready, when it's soft, you can fit the Everstick post into the canal using the lateral condensation technique. So this picture is not the picture of the case number 4. It's the picture from other patient, but I use it to explain the step-by-step of making a Everstick J post over here. Okay, so once you already conform the shape into the canal, you feed it, you remove it, and you outside, and you bend the coronal end of the post into the J shape like this. You just bend it, twist it a little bit with your tweezer. That is good enough. And then you reinsert the post into the canal, and then cure the exposed part. Okay, so now the J hook part will be stiff, but the inside portion, because the light cure cannot penetrate the canal, so it's still soft inside. So you remove the post from the canal, and then light cure the remaining part of the post. So now after light curing, the post will be very, very stiff, very, very strong. And then after that, once fully cured, the post, you reinsert back into the canal, check for the fit of the post. So usually it will fit nicely. And then using then you cement it with a dual cure resin based cement. Why I use a dual cure resin based cement is because you cannot light cure the post inside the canal. So when you use a dual cure, so there is the light cure component and also the chemical cure component from the cement. So it will ensure that the cement can the post can stick into the structure longer. And then this is the patient where we already put the J hook on, and then we put the bracket on with the patient, and we tie the elastics to the J hook. So we put the bracket on, and we use the spring this time as a space maintainer to prevent the movement of the unnecessary movement of the tooth into the space of the fractured tooth. And then afterwards, we managed to bring the tooth supragingivally, so you can see the palatal portion of the tooth already here. So now we want to hasten to fasten the eruption or the extrusion of the teeth. So what we think of, we build up the tooth into a nice, temporarily as a nice tooth structure over there using a strip crown, and then we put on the bracket. And then we initiate the tooth movement again. So with the bracket on, so there's more force can be acted on the tooth structure, so that it will be much more faster for the tooth to be extruded into the level that we desired. If you use the J hook throughout the treatment of extrusion, so it will take a little bit longer for the tooth to be extruded. Okay, so this is the post-op extrusion. So you can see the crown root ratio is in a favorable position. There's no periapical lesion. There's no the root canal treatment is nicely done, and this is the final outcome of the patient. Okay, so you can see once we extrude the tooth, we managed to put the crown on and build up both into the similar size. So the patient is very happy to having the tooth being safe, and the tooth re-establish the aesthetic of the patient. Okay, and some learning points from this case is the orthodontic extrusion is still a viable option, especially when the fracture margin is subgingival. And whenever the enamel is present, you can directly bond the bracket, and the position of the bracket should be slightly apical or cervical as compared to the other brackets. So this will to create a force to bring the tooth down. And otherwise, extrusion by the means of a J hook or button is needed. And for the placement of J hook, definitely you need an RCT to be performed first. Otherwise, you will cause unnecessary pulp necrosis or inflammation later on. And then space maintenance should be considered in the cases of a very minimal structure available to prevent the space loss. Okay, so this is what, as I mentioned before, and the flexibility of the everstick post give a new dimension and option in extruding the crown root fracture with a subgingival margin. Okay, so to conclude my presentation today, the management of crown root fracture with subgingival margin pose a great challenge to the clinician, mainly the periodontist. But with careful treatment planning, it will ensure a high quality outcome where interdisciplinary approach is usually required to achieve the aims. So definitely, you need the help from your orthodontic colleague. You might need a consultation from your endodontic colleague, or maybe periodontist as well, whenever you concerned about the crown root ratio and the violation of the biological width. So it's always an interdisciplinary approach in managing such cases. Okay, so with that, I would like to thank you all for your time listening to my presentation. So last but not least, this is our picture with my postgraduate students in Beijing in 2018, if not mistaken. We have Dr. Norita joining us as well for during the AAPD, PDAA, sorry, in Beijing last year. Okay, with that, thank you very much. So I'll stop sharing my presenting. Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shuhud, for the enlightening sharing session for this webinars. I've seen that some questions are for you from the chat box.
Okay.
The first one, berapa lama tempoh untuk apply orthodontic extrusion?
It depends on the how severe is the how severe is the fracture line located. So usually in our case is plus minus around 4 to 6 weeks, 1 month to 1.5 months. So usually you can actually see that the tooth are start to coming out.
Okay, next question. What is the success rate and common complication after orthodontic extrusion treatment?
Success rate, I would say almost 100%. So there's no much more. There's not much complication afterwards, because when you do an orthodontic extrusion, you actually bringing the bone downwards together. The only thing that you might need to concern about is the crown root ratio, where after the extrusion, whether there is a sufficient crown root ratio or not. So that should be in your treatment planning. And number 2 is the post-op stabilization. So sometimes when you extrude a tooth, so there is a tendency for the tooth or the crown to go back into their normal position, or re-intrude back into the tooth, into the original position. So you might need a certain time for stabilization of the position of the post extrusion So you can do it either by using a spleen, a palatal spleen, or you can just maintain the bracket on the tooth structure. So you don't debond it immediately. You put the crown on nicely, and then you put back the bracket on so as to act, but there's no force acting on it. So just as a mode of stabilization. Okay. But yes, apart from that, they also reported some pocketing, periodontal pocketing after the extrusion if the extrusion pathway is not well aligned. But in our cases, we don't find, we do check of the pocketing still within the normal range. So the gingival attachment also, there is a need, they will take some times for the gingival attachment to reattach back to the tooth structure. So please do check about the pocketing, about the crown root ratio, and also maintain the post-op maintenance, or the what we call the stabilization of the tooth after extrusion. So I think that's the most common concern when doing this orthodontic extrusion.
Okay. Okay. Next question. If we are going to reattach a fracture to fragment, which material should use to recement, considering poor moisture control from GCF and bleeding?
Yep, a very good question. Whenever you try to reattach the tooth, the best material is always a composite, because you actually can have a direct bond of it. But if you can't, you can also use a GIC, but only for a couple of days. So meaning that you put the spleen on, and then after 2 or 3 days, you call the patient back. On that time, there's no more bleeding. There's and the moisture control will be much better, and then you can actually remove a little bit of the GIC on the outer portion, and you can patch it with the composite later on, like some sort, like a sandwich technique. Okay, so you can do it after a couple of days after you reattach the tooth.
Okay, I think another one more last questions for the day. For trauma patient with crown root fracture seen in the emergency room, how should the mobile structures be stabilized before treatment in the clinic? Whether using GIC or extract the mobile structure?
If you we should put the treatment plan in the patient perspective. So if most of the patients, so because sometimes we haven't think about it, we just never think about the aesthetic of the patient. So sometimes patient datang gigi patah suddenly, and then when they come back from the emergency, there's no more tooth over there. So then tomorrow they want to go to school and everything. So there is a psychological impact on it. So sometimes it's best if you can still reattach back the tooth temporarily. So that is what the IADT guideline meant by try to stabilize the mobile fracture, so that actually you also take into account the aesthetic of the patient later on, before, because in the ED you don't have that much material on. You don't have the light cure unit, sometimes you don't have the composite, so just stabilize it with the GIC, and then put a spleen, a nice spleen over there, and after the next day, or after the 2 days when the bleeding are already subsided and so on, so you can actually remove the GIC and recontour back the tooth and put a nice composite restoration as a stabilization first. And then as the treatment goes on, then you can actually do the subsequent treatment accordingly. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ahmad Shuhud. I hope this answers a lot of burning questions from the audience. It's very interesting lecture to share with all of us. We from MEPD, we would like to thank for giving us this lecture for today. Just some housekeeping announcement. We have put up in the chat box the link for CPD points for today. Please do fill in the Google Forms and to update the attendance list. And apart from that, I think the clock is nearing 2. Going back to our usual business. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmad Shuhud, and thank you for all for joining our MAPD webinar series for today.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. We will put up another poster for our next series, which is in February, and hope do visit us on our social media to for the next series. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you. So it's my pleasure to have you all, and thank you for listening. And have a nice day. Stay safe.
yes, stay safe. Okay.
Tastes like strawberries on a summer evening, and it sounds like a song. I want more berries and that summer feeling. It's so wonderful.